Good morning and welcome to Heartland's Iconic Interviews presented by Heartland's DEI Committee. My name is Tim Sebastian. I'm the current president of the Heartland REALTOR Organization. And could we all stand, please, and face the flag, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, good morning and welcome, and thank you for joining us for this wonderful program. Myself and Ms. Sue Miller will be moderating this morning, and special thanks to the Heartland staff and especially Jim Heisler. Jim, raise your hand. Everyone knows who you are, but are you speaking today at all? Or Neely too, don't forget Neely way in the back there. The first thing I noticed when we came in is that I thought maybe I was at one of these wine painting parties or something like that. So it looks like a lot of fun back there. Make sure you visit and get to add a little bit to the painting and everything like that. And we'll see if we can get the wine bottles brought in late. Jim, could you work on that, please? The wine painting and everything. But anyway, we are here for iconic interviews, and we have special guests and a panel here that you'll be able to ask questions. And with Black History Month in the depths of February right now, what a perfect time for this to take place. And are we streaming too, Jim, or are we Zooming? So we're Zooming, so we have a crowd here. And then do we know how many are Zooming with us? 23. So quite a big group. We got to meet our speakers last night and had a wonderful time and discussion with them. And I guess the most interesting thing is that I find is that it's I'll use the word sad. It's sort of sad that we even have to have this in the year 2022. But the fact is, and I know this from personal experience, here in McHenry County, I could jump in my car right now and drive somewhere and point out to you where I know discrimination in housing is taking place. And that's just, it's just beyond me that in this time of our country that is still taking place, but it still is. And I'm glad that Heartland's on the forefront of correcting this and giving us the tools as realtors to be able to deal with this. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Sue Miller, and she's going to give us a little background on how we got to where we are today and where DEI came from and how we're using it with Heartland and sort of set the tone of what's happening today. So please enjoy today, and please have plenty of questions for the question and answer period.
Thank you, Tim. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. Thank you for venturing out into the cold, the winter, the wonderful place we call home. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to bring you this program. Tim said I'm going to give you a little background. Where and why? Why are we here today? Well, all of you know that I'm an educator, and Deborah and I, Dearborn from North NASBAR, just had a quick conversation at the pastry station that said you can't move forward unless you know your past. How many of you believe that? Yep, most of us in the room. So you have to understand the history of diversity, equity, and inclusion before you can make a difference in the future. And when Heartland's DEI committee was formed, we said, what can we do to make the world a better place? And where do we start? And we started to have a conversation about the conversations that take place around the hard subjects. And that's how we got to today. We said, those conversations are not clear, those conversations are not comfortable, and those conversations are difficult. How can we put our friends in a room and make those conversations happen? So ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you iconic interviews. The people who have made a difference coming from the past and moving to the present, who have helped move our industry forward in so many ways. Today, you will hear 4 individuals that will change your world. And I hope you will open your eyes and your hearts and ask them the questions that you need answers to. We're going to start out this morning with Gwen Newton from the Dearborn Realtist. She's going to give you a video tour of what the Dearborn Realtors do. We're going to follow Gwen up with Kim Albrecht. Kim is our Director and Executive Officer of the McHenry County Housing Authority. In Kim's role, she sees it all. And Kim is going to share with you from a McHenry County Housing Authority standpoint what she sees in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then lastly, I'm going to invite up Joanne Poole from Maryland, who is going to talk to you about her journey in real estate. And finally, my friend Frank Williams from Chicago. Frank has just celebrated his 50th year in real estate. Do you think Frank's seen a thing or two? Yeah, congratulations, Frank. Look at that. Frank's going to share his story. And after Frank and Joanne share their stories, if you haven't shed a tear or two by then, I'm going to come join the party and ask them some hard questions. But I want you to be included in those questions. So if you find yourself wanting to ask something, write it down, because I'm going to ask you for your questions first. And if you go silent on me, how many of you had a class with me before? What happens when you go silent? You get called out. So I'll start the conversation, but you're going to end the conversation. Because ladies and gentlemen, this is about you and expanding your horizons. That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about. So with that introduction, I am going to kick this off. And let me introduce Gideon too. Gideon, stand up. Gideon Bluestein, our now Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and Outreach, right? Or did I mess that up?
Senior Director.
Senior Director of...
I don't want to get a hopscotch. Local Government and External Affairs and audiovisual extraordinaire for today. So please forgive any mess ups, all right?
So Gideon's from Illinois Realtors, and that is a new promotion for Gideon. So he's in charge of everything. So thank you, Gideon, for being here. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Have you grown any gray hairs yet since you got that senior title?
That's why it's so short on the sides.
All right, nice. So Gideon is going to take care of our AV today. So if we see, hey, we need a pause, we're on pause. So thank you, Gideon, for all that you do. And of course, Neely, thank you for putting this all together. You truly are a rock star. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I have to just take a moment before we go on. As past president of Illinois Realtors, I get to see a lot of stuff. And we have GADs throughout the state. And Neely is a rock star. Where other GADs did 1 or 2 or 3 things during the course of the year, last year, Neely did 16 events for our northern region, and she was really outstanding. So again, Neely, my heart goes out to you. I thank you for all you do. You really do outperform. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So with that said, let's get the party started. Gideon, are you ready to roll on Gwen? So once again, Gwen Newton, the president of the Chicago Dearborn Realtists. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gwendolyn Newton. I am the president for the Dearborn Realtist Board, Chicago's Black Real Estate Trade Association. The Dearborn Realtist Board was chartered back in 1941 out of the need to address the discriminatory practices against Blacks. During the early 1940s, roughly 60,000 Blacks moved from the South to Chicago. They were primarily limited to an area known as the Black Belt, 22nd Street to 79th, Wentworth Avenue to Cottage Grove. In an effort to keep Blacks from moving in, whites within residential blocks form restrictive covenants. Restrictive covenants were formal agreements by which neighbors pledged not to sell or rent homes to Black people or other minorities. Moreover, these pacts didn't just apply to those who signed them. Courts had actually ruled that anyone who bought a property in a community with covenants had to honor them, and their use proliferated across the country as Blacks fled the Jim Crow South, only to find that segregation had followed them to the north. It wasn't until 1948 that the Supreme Court declared restrictive covenants illegal. Although not enforced, restrictive covenants still sit on the books now in neighborhoods like Oak Park. Through practices such as blockbusting and redlining, African American and African American communities have been devastated. Families have been stripped of wealth and other resources. The formation of the Dearborn Realtors Board also gave African American real estate professionals a home when they were not welcome in other trade associations. Recently, the Realtor organizations have apologized and have been actively working to build better partnerships. Dearborn actually turns 81 this year, and sadly, we're still having some of the same conversations that we were having 81 years ago. There is a lack of affordable housing. Many communities lack basic essentials. Today, fewer than 45% of Black households own their homes compared to the 75% of white households. Under appraisal of home values in Black neighborhoods, higher loan denial rates, misleading credit score models, and unfair mortgage pricing schemes that penalize Blacks for decades of forced economic deprivation. All of these things impede Black homeownership progress. African American communities have been seriously marginalized. Now, I joined the Dearborn Realtors Board roughly 8 years ago because it aligned with what I was already doing in the Black communities. I was advocating and educating anyone and everyone that I could and could come in contact with. The lack of wealth, the lack of credit, the lack of access to capital, the lack of necessity, the lack of opportunity are all detrimental. We are standing at a threshold, a point where we all need to come together and align to support our mission and advocate for organizations like the Dearborn Realtors Board. Now, the Dearborn Realtors Board, its members and its partners have an opportunity to make a difference. Now, we're located in Chicago, but there are many other realtors across the nation. Local chapters in California, Florida, Maryland, Texas, Atlanta. And if you'd like more information about our organization, I would ask you to go to www.chicagorealtist.org, where you can find us on social media, on Instagram and Facebook at Chicago Realtist. Now, our national chapter, which we call NAREB, stands for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And it is under that national association where we have our other affiliate chapters across the nation. You can go check them out at www.narab.com. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to join you all today. I do apologize that I was not able to make it in person, but I am hoping and praying that I see you soon, and I look forward to many, many days ahead building our partnerships. Have a great day.
And Gwen really is sorry that she couldn't make it out today. She was under the weather and we were grateful for her video. So if you do have questions about the Dearborn Realtist, please do check out their website, dearbornrealtist.org. I'm a member, and clearly they are very much about education and moving this topic forward. Frank, you're a member. Past president. Mabel, you're a member. Mabel, could you please stand up, please? Mabel Guzman. Mabel is obviously one of our Chicago Realtors, past president of the Chicago Area Association of Realtors, past vice president of National Association of Realtors for Association Affairs. I always get people's titles confused, and obviously a leader in this direction as well. So if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have great leaders in the room. So thank you, Gwen, wherever you are today. I hope you're well and staying warm. And truly, if you have a desire to learn more, that is a great group of individuals that has a common goal to increase home ownership and the availability of capital to Black homeowners. So please keep them in mind when you want to seek out information. They are all about the data, and a great group of individuals. So moving forward, it is my great pleasure and honor again to introduce to you Kim Albrecht. Kim is the new director of the McHenry County Housing Authority. It was my pleasure to be on her board when Kim came on board, and she took over for a long-standing director, came in at a time where the Housing Authority was right in the middle of a bunch of stuff. And she had a big, it always is, she had a big task to take on, and she has taken it all. I called her the magician at the circus with all the spinning plates. There was not a plate that fell off a stick. Not one dropped, not one fell, not one broke. And in the last 18 months, Kim has put that place back on the map. So, Miss Kim, the microphone is yours. Give her a warm welcome.
Well, thank you very much for including the Housing Authority in your event today. It really says a lot of the Heartland Realtor Association and everyone here to include a housing authority, because typically most of your clients may or may not need our services down the road, but many may, and it's really nice to be able to tell you a little bit about what we do. We often see people on one of their worst days of their life. Oftentimes people think that we only do vouchers and public housing, but that just is not true. We have been around for 75 years, helping the lowest incomes of individuals. We have over 17 programs. 17 programs that we provide, and this helps. What we do in a nutshell is help people get affordable housing, have programs to help them maintain their housing, and help them in a crisis situation. So we do that through these programs. And oftentimes they come and go depending on the needs of the community. Many times we have to help out and change and pivot when there's a crisis. Like small crisis could be an apartment building has a fire and all the tenants are displaced. So we can come in, we can get them into hotels, we can help them find a new place if it's going to be a while for that to be repaired. We even have a new beds program that we can help and provide them with new beds to help get them started. So that's a small crisis that we can participate in. We've also helped in 2008 during the mortgage crisis, housing crisis. We stepped in with our HPRP program. And most currently, during the pandemic, we have been administering the McHenry program, which is the much needed emergency rental and utility assistance. To date, we have helped over 600 McHenry County families with that program, and countless landlords. We've put money into the hands of countless landlords. I've signed checks for $25,000, $35,000, you know, who desperately needed that money and have been on pause for so long. So we are always able to pivot. Next slide, please. One thing I do want to talk to you about is our programs for homeowners. They don't often think about us when they have an issue or need some help. And you can help us with this to get the word out. Maybe sometimes, a client or two could use our programs. We have a LIHEAP program, and that helps with our electric and gas bills. You do not have to be behind for this program. And we encourage anyone who income qualifies for that program to apply, especially right now when gas and food, everything is so expensive. If you can save a few bucks on your utility bills, that will help, especially lower income individuals. Owner occupied rehab, we can come in and do repairs. We can take care of health and safety issues. Many times this program helps seniors in particular. They can make their mortgage payment, or they don't have a mortgage payment. They keep current on their taxes. But when they have a crisis, a major repair that they can't afford to do, or a little nest egg to pay for, we can come in and do that. We can do roofs, we can do furnaces, well and septic, whatever the situation is. We have our weatherization program, and a lot of people participate in this. We come do an audit in the home and then repair things that to make it more energy efficient. It's a very technical program that I know nothing about, but we have a great team and they do a great job. New this year, we have our Csvg past due mortgage assistance program. This is new for us. We have so much rental assistance right now that we felt that we needed to get a program out there for homeowners who maybe needed some help with their mortgages falling slightly behind. We can't help with hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we do have helped up to 6 months, I believe it is, and $6,500. We can go more if need be, but just to get somebody over that hump. We do have that. Next slide, please. So our largest program, and probably the one you're most familiar with, is our Housing Choice Voucher program. That helps tenants with they paid 30% of their income towards rent and utilities. So I put a little bit of the demographics up here. A little bit, 88% of our Section 8 holders are white or Hispanic. They're lumped together, unfortunately, in our category. So about 10.9% are Black, then 0.5 is Asian, and Native American is a very small amount. Over 50% of our tenants identify as disabled. And this is really important because they are on a set income. An average disability check is about $750 a month. So they're expected to live on that. So they belong in our Section 8 program. That is the safety net that they need. So 30% of that will go towards their rent and utilities. Next slide, please. This gives you a little bit idea of income. So a little bit more than 50% make anywhere between $1,000 to $5,000 a month who are on Section 8. Now, I quite honestly don't know who in our program is making $5,000 a month. It must be somebody who's an absolutely huge family. But that's about half of it. So they do have income, and then it just goes down from there. Then also homeless. We have several vouchers that are identified for homeless individuals. We have 45 BASH vouchers, which helps chronically homeless veterans. We help people coming out of supportive housing, permanent supportive housing, among other populations. And that just gives you an idea. Next slide, please. So one of the things that the housing authorities did, we did ours in 2018, is in order to be able to entice more landlords to participate in the Housing Choice Voucher program and to give our clients some options of other places to live, is we adopted the small fair market rent. So it used to be when you had a Housing Choice Voucher and you had, I'd say you needed a 2-bedroom, it wouldn't matter whether you lived in Harvard or you lived in Algonquin. You got the same amount of money. The landlord got the same. So this, we developed, it does it by zip code. And what that means is somebody can live in Harvard and pay for a 2-bedroom, $1,254 up to that. That's the highest that we can go, $1,254 for a 2-bedroom. If they get a job closer towards Algonquin and they want to move to Algonquin, goes to $1,890, which gives them the opportunity to move near their job, near transportation, and maybe better schools. It opens it up tremendously, and we can be competitive with our vouchers. We needed to do that. The next slide, please. So the pros of that, developing that, is that it's great. People have a lot more opportunity. They're not stuck, way at the ends and without transportation. They can move around. They can be by family. The disadvantages, because we're paying higher rents, we can help fewer people. So we were helping about 887 people when this started in 2008, and now we're just below 820. Now that has been exacerbated in the past year with the rents going up quite a bit. We've had rents go up 50% in some of our areas. So we have to foot the bill for that. Next slide, please. So another thing that we participate in is project-based vouchers. And I'm sure you're pretty familiar with that. It's a little different than housing choice vouchers. When we, project-based are the tax credit developments that are scattered throughout the county. And they often come to us for vouchers. They really need some vouchers in that development to make that project feasibly, for them to feasibly make that project work financially. And one thing we look at is we don't want to take what they did years ago and put those projects in very low income, high minority areas. That's not what we want to do. That doesn't work. That isn't, so we've learned from our sins of the past. So here is just in the area of McHenry County where we have low income and it's identified as high minority levels. We would not want to put one of those developments in those census tracts. We want to put them in high opportunity areas. Next slide, please. These are just a couple. We have 11 of these scattered throughout the county. Most of them, well, they're actually all over the place. The last one that just opened in January is in Johnsburg, Berkshire Johnsburg, and that is for seniors 55 and older. They took a school and repurposed it and made a wonderful development out of that. So it's a wonderful idea. It's a great way to get affordable housing into the community. Our vouchers, and they range, some of the projects have 7 vouchers, some of them have 18 in there. And so we pay the market rate rent. Our vouchers are paying the market rate rent, and the other units are affordable units. So they're charging a much lower rent to those tenants. Our vouchers are identified, we have a need, or excuse me, a priority in our waiting list of people who live or work in McHenry County to participate in these. The advantages, we get more affordable housing. The disadvantages, it's costly. These projects are very expensive. There's a lot of regulation and you have to make them look good. There's a lot of NIMBYism as well. Nobody wants them in their backyard. But we've been very successful with these. Next slide, please. Of course, all of our programs depend on having our partners, whether it's a project-based voucher or a landlord in a Section 8 voucher that has a Section 8 voucher unit. The advantages for the landlords is you get consistent on-time rental payments, you get pre-approved clients, there's a low vacancy rate, and there's also a safety net. If that tenant loses their job or becomes ill, they come in, we readjust their portion of the rent and we pay the bigger portion. So there's a safety net for the tenant and for the landlord. And we have countless landlords that are willing to provide decent, affordable housing to our tenants and have stepped up, especially during this crisis, have reached out and wanted to do whatever they could for their tenants so they could stay in the house and help them. And we're very, very grateful. We couldn't do any of this without them. The project-based vouchers are particularly important to me because I'm a product of public housing. Many years ago, my mother got divorced in early 1970s when, not a lot of people were divorced. She was a divorcee and that was news. We lived in Glen Ellen. She had 5 kids and trying to find a place to rent for a woman at that time with 5 kids. I can tell you we also have this problem today still, unfortunately. One landlord told her he would rather rent to 5 snakes than someone with 5 kids. She had to leave Glen Ellen and we ended up in the projects in Carpentersville because that was the only place that would take her. And that's a life-changing moment from Glen Ellen, your friends, we were all in school and then going and moving to Carpentersville, a very different thing. And it was definitely, I had a lot of shame living there. A lot of people made fun of you. People were, oh, you live down there. And then they were, and I remember thinking, I just want to be normal. We want to have a normal, which is a whole different thing. As it turns out, what it did for 8 years while she lived there and raised her 5 kids, it provided us affordable housing. And we had a lot of support from a lot of different people, from church people and friends and family that really helped us through that time. We were very fortunate. But I think we can do better. I know MCHA is definitely doing better, and I would love to have any work with you to continue to do that work and help in any way that we can.
Any questions for Kim, ladies or gentlemen? Any questions about what McHenry County Housing Authority does? Kim Keefe.
What I could see back here, some of those look the same to what is actually. So, for example, is there a review? Is there?
Absolutely. Kim, stand up.
Absolutely. We actually have a program. It's a HUD program that we run. We input everything into that, and we don't come up with the numbers ourselves. It's a program that we use from HUD. Anytime someone wants to become a landlord or they want to raise their rent, we have to do, even though those are the most that we can pay, but we do an analysis on, they give us 3 similar properties in the area. If it's in a building, that's very easy. If it's a home, we have to go through, and we try to find the best rent for that area for that landlord. So we still do that.
Anybody else have a question for Kim? Can't believe she went through all that material and there's only one question.
Oh, here.
Deborah.
Wait,
I'm coming.
I'm kind of curious about volunteer opportunities. What kind of help do you need in terms of volunteers?
That's an interesting question. It depends on the programs that we have at the time, but I believe if somebody would like to, we don't have a lot of volunteers, but that our energy efficient program, the LIHE program, could definitely use volunteers to help call people, set up appointments, process. It's very easy applications. And we want to get as many people in the door to do that. There's always something to help out with at our agency. We're a poor agency, so we do a lot with it. We're not related to the county in any way. We're a separate nonprofit governmental agency.
It feels like a fair housing violation, but if I have a landlord who would like to rent a unit to a Section 8 person, is that someone I would direct to you for a list of candidates?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They come off of our list. That's one thing people don't understand is they think that if they have a landlord that they can just go in that house. We have a list of vouchers and we have a waiting list. And so the people that go to those landlords come off of our list. He can't choose someone for the house.
Kim, I had the rare opportunity to serve with you on your board for several years, so I understand your operation, but tell us about your waiting list and how that works.
Sure. We have, the list was last open, I believe, in 2018 for about a week. And we have now 3,300 people on, a little give or take, on that list. So a lot of people. However, it is closed. So I don't know when we'll open it again. It'll get down a little bit and then we'll reopen it. So you can't even get on a Section 8 list. So number one question we get is, how do I get a Section 8 voucher? Unfortunately, right now, I have to say, we don't have a Section 8. You can't even get on the waiting list for it. However, we do have other waiting lists, and we have a tab on our website that says open waiting list. So you know somebody who needs some help. There are all those project-based vouchers that we have. We also have 96 senior and disabled housing units. We have a building off of the square called Renaissance that's affordable housing. So we have other lists that they can go, and not all of them are open, but a lot of them are. And we always tell people, apply to every list you qualify for. We can't help you if you aren't on a list, and you never know where your name is going to come up. When we do these lists, we have to go very far down into them to actually get names. Lots of times people's circumstances have changed, they've moved and we can't get a hold of them, or, you know, they just decided to, you know, move out of state and go live with family, all sorts of reasons. So we go pretty far down. On our Section 8 list, we pull about 100 applications at a time when we're pulling from the list. So every month, people come off the Section 8 program. Usually they've earned more income and they can stabilize and go out on their own, which is great. That's what we want them to do. So then we pull names, and we pull them at 100 at a time. And out of the 100, we usually only get about 5 that we can move forward with. So it's amazing how people, same thing. We can't reach them. They've moved and didn't update their information. They don't qualify for a variety of reasons. And so we do have a priority for people who live and work in McHenry County. So, you know, they go first. But so we always encourage people, we can't help you unless you're on the list. And we do have rental assistance that maybe we can't give continual support for, but we can help them with first month's rent, security deposit, if they needed to get them going.
Do you accept, I'm over here. Do you accept donations, or do you ever have any fundraisers, or are you just fully funded by this?
So we don't currently do any fundraisers. We do accept donations, and someone can tell us what they want them to go for, and they will be tagged for those things. Like we help the homeless, we help get them sometimes bus tickets, sometimes we give them, you know, Ubers. We have all sorts of things to beds, furniture, things like that to help get them set up. So you can designate it for how you want it to go. We are not a 501c3 at this point. That's my next. I want to get us moved, and I want to make us an arm, a 501c3 arm where we can fundraise. Because right now we're a nonprofit, but we do not have a mechanism to raise funds, which is very difficult because all of our money is siloed. It's all grants, so we have to work within these grants. I don't like if one grant is running low and say I need to help, you know, could use a little extra money. I can't take other money from another grant to help it. So we're very limited that way. So we definitely want to expand and to be able to do more affordable housing.
I have a question. The program that helps tenants with their electric and gas bill, is that something that's common with housing authorities across the state? And where does the funding for that come from?
It's not housing authorities. It is usually community action groups run the state program. So that's a state program. Some money comes from the state, some of it comes from the federal, and it runs through the state. But there is usually in every county, you can look up and see who has a LIHEAP program, and they have it in, or you call the housing authority and they can tell you where it is.
Anything else for Miss Kim? Gideon.
Question from the Zoom audience. How long does it take a tenant to be qualified?
That depends on the tenant. If we pull a tenant's name and they get us all there's a lot of documents, especially for Section 8, really for most of our programs. I mean, we really take, you know, we kill a few trees, unfortunately, with all the regulations that we have to do. But if they're quick at getting us their documents, and it's certainly a lot easier now, we can accept them electronically. We have, they can do all sorts, they can drop it off, that kind of thing. We try to make it easier. We have people to help them upload their documents if they don't know how to do that or can't do that. So it depends on the person. We've had people get their voucher, get their application to the voucher through in a matter of 2 weeks, but they were just really fast. Other people kind of drag their feet and it can take a couple months to get them, and we have to hound them to get their information. And sometimes it can be very daunting for people to, if you don't have a social security card and you don't have an ID, those type of things, proof of, you know, your a utility bill and that type of stuff. It can take a little bit of work to help them get that, but we do have people that can help.
So Kim and I did a program last Saturday, People in Need program for the county. So we did an hour-long presentation on this topic of housing voucher or housing assistance, as I call it. What I touched on was the landlord side, and that's what we haven't really talked about here. There is a great shortage of landlords of properties being available for the county, as you've heard. They've got a long waiting list. So what we need from you is when you have a landlord who's looking for a new tenant, that you consider Section 8 housing assistance. Let's dispel the myths really quick. So there's not a lot of paperwork. There's not. There's probably 3 extra pieces of paper. They're very simple. There is an inspection that they do. I love the inspection as a landlord myself, and we have Section 8 and my wife and I own rental property. We love that inspection. It's an annual inspection. They come out and they verify the property. That's great. Not only does it give me a chance to get through the property, but the tenants have to make sure that we get in to do that for them to qualify. It's not difficult to pass the inspection. It's health, safety, life concerns. It's easy. A delay. There's only a slight delay in getting a tenant in versus a regular tenant that's through the housing authority. I'd say maybe a week's delay. The housing authority is awesome at getting out quickly. We had one inspection issue at a property that's trying to get a new tenant in, that the smoke detector was a combo unit, carbon monoxide smoke detector, and it didn't say it on the unit. I agree with the inspector. It didn't say it, but the package that I bought said it was. I said to the inspector, I can run to Home Depot and be back here and have this thing installed in 30 minutes. She said, I'm gonna go to lunch and I'll be right back. I mean, that's how good she was, because they want to get tenants in properties. They were awesome. I can't guarantee that's gonna happen every time, of course, but well done. And then Kim's point about rental, it used to be, and I've had rental tenants with housing authority for many, many years. It used to be that we took a reduced rent. That is no longer the case. You saw on the screen, those are very much market rate rents. I mean, is there a slight deduction in some places? Possibly, but I haven't seen that. Those have come up greatly, and all the myths have been dispelled. It's no longer a detriment to a landlord. So help bring your clients across. Have them call me. You guys know how to reach me. I don't care what association you're with. Call me. I'm happy to discuss the programs with them. Good. I think we have to wrap up here.
Thank you.
Do we have one more question?
Oh, we do one more quick. Go ahead.
It is. It is. It's on for the landlord and for the tenant. The landlord has very few documents. And one more thing I just want to mention is the landlord has the choice. We send him over. It is a landlord's choice if for some, that you run your own, whether you do a credit check or another background check, whatever it is that you want to do, it is the landlord's choice on that tenant. Thank you so much.
Kim, thank you so much. Again, it's been my honor and pleasure. Kim took on some really enormous mountains when she came on board and has done a great job in just restructuring the McHenry County Housing Authority, as you saw with the numerous programs that they have. It is truly a mountain when you walk in that office, and she has amazing staff. So if you haven't had an opportunity to pick up the phone and call her, or your housing authority, if you're from out of town, please do. They are not a one-trick pony. They have a whole circus going on under that tent. So please pick up the phone and call them. Oh, Jim's telling me to move. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, our first keynote speaker of the day. It is my privilege to bring you from Maryland, far, far away, my dear friend, Joanne Poole. Joanne, please join me up in the front. Your chair, whichever's comfortable for you. Yeah, I can do. Joanne is going to tell you her story, years and years of selling real estate, and the obstacles that she still faces today, and her path and her vision for our future. So, ladies and gentlemen, my friend Joanne Poole. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am just so glad to be here today. It's an opportunity to have conversations that we would normally say are politically incorrect. It's an opportunity to be able to say, we all have stories to tell. Some are horrific, some are good. But today I'm able to come to you and share a little bit about myself and a little bit about all the things that we can do together. I want to give a special thank you, though, to the Heartland REALTOR Organization's president, Tim Sebastian, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chairwoman, Sue Miller, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Heartland, REALTOR Organization, Jeff Heisler, for inviting me to be here with you today. It is a privilege and an honor to be here. I also want to thank the Dearborn Realtors President, Gwen Newton, and the McHenry County Housing Authority Speaker, Kim Albrecht, for making the time to be here to provide your information. It is very timely and very needed. But you see, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have to understand it plays a huge role in fair housing and discrimination. I think we could all spend a day talking about the stories surrounding discrimination, but I want to talk about the who, the what, the why, the how, and where discrimination exists, and how can we possibly start to eliminate it. Lyndon Johnson once said, "We have come some of the way, not near all of it. There's still much to do." I don't believe human beings are born with oppressive attitudes and biases. But I do believe these are traits that are learned, and these behaviors become automatic thinking. The problem with automatic thinking is that it's very difficult to turn off. The only way to turn off automatic thinking is to take the time to recognize the behaviors that need to be changed. You have to understand your own biases before you can begin to help anyone else with theirs. I'm licensed in both Maryland and Pennsylvania, and I'm sure many of you may be licensed to cross borders. But my license doesn't limit where I can work in Maryland or Pennsylvania. It doesn't say who I can work with in Maryland and Pennsylvania. My license doesn't state my race, my color, or my sexual preference. And I would say neither do yours. So, is there a reason that a licensee needs to be made to feel that there are certain neighborhoods that they can't work in? Certain things that they're not able to help people find? Any reason a licensee should be told, "You can't show my listing"? Is there any reason that a settlement attorney who is doing a settlement for a Black buyer to talk about restrictions in the deed from the 1800s that talk about cattle, chickens, pigs, and Negroes not being permitted to be on a property? Why would a person who does not know you feel that it's okay when talking with you on a phone about possibly listing their home, that when showing that home, if you get that listing, certain people would be barred from being able to enter that home? How about being in a room full of people and making a presentation, or being elected to an office and being told you're only a token? Well, all these things I've mentioned have happened to me, but I have never allowed myself to accept this as being normal, but I've never forgotten them. I also believe that some of those things may happen again. Housing discrimination isn't getting better. If anything, it's getting worse. 2016 saw an uptick in housing-related hate activity. And since last fall, there has also been an increase in hate crimes involving people who were harassed within their neighborhoods, in their workplaces, and even in their homes. We've seen or heard about the fights, the fires, the killings in the marketplace, redlining, and variances in appraisals. Segregated neighborhoods and the gap in home ownership rates didn't happen solely as a natural consequence of people's individual housing choices. Many people live apart because of past systematic policy of residential racial segregation led by the federal government through the first half of the 20th century and supported by the real estate industry. You would think that these many years later, there would be change, but all this is still happening today. We've all heard about the Newsday article. We've all heard how discrimination is active in different parts of the world. We've recently heard about a realtor being locked up because he was reported as being inside of a person's home. He was a Black realtor showing that home in a white neighborhood. We've also heard about the story of the police being called simply because an agent was trying to show a property and looking for the lockbox, where the lockbox had been purposefully put in an area that he could not find and was never told where it existed. So the police were called by neighbors and told that there was somebody randomly walking the property. It's not easy to think that none of what I'm talking about so far would happen in your area or with your listing or with people you're interviewing to become buyer or seller clients. But I will share with you that this is happening more often than you would want to believe. So this is where we should begin. Since beginning my real estate career, it has always been about professionalism and rising above the ordinary. You see, I understand that there are people who would get great joy out of watching me and other people of color fail. However, I personally know that there are people who want to see me and other people of color succeed. But I'll share with you that we can all fail if we don't all become part of the solution. We must be willing to tell people in a calm and professional manner when discriminatory actions and conversations are happening. For example, people who are getting in conversations who talk about those people. When a homeowner who greeted me at their front door, when I was about to show their home, to tell me I was not allowed in his home, but my clients who were white could. When I reported those actions to the listing agent said to me, well, it's their home. They can do what they want. When a floor duty call comes in and a homeowner was talking about me possibly listing their property, but that no Black people could come in, nor would he sell to a Black person. But I'll share with you, he didn't say Black people, he used the N-word. You see, this was easy for him to be able to let that roll off of his lips because he couldn't see who I was. He did not know who he was talking with. And so therein, I could only imagine if I didn't stop him in his conversation and just showed up at his door, what would have happened. But I did have to share with him, sir, I'm sorry, but this conversation needs to stop because I'm one of those Black people that you're talking about. To deal with situations like these, I learned not to react negatively, no matter how humiliating and embarrassing the situation, because that's what some people want you to do because they want to use it against you. I'm more willing to share these type stories and situations with others Because I believe there are more people who don't do these things and don't say these things than do. I talk with people who want to find solutions rather than those who don't. I want to work with people who want to find solutions, and rather than people who want to react and attack. Diversity, equity, inclusion, along with fair housing issues or challenges, are faced by many. It's not just me with my story. There's stories like these every time you have a conversation with someone who is a person of color. Some decide to address the situation head on. Some decide to do nothing. Some say it's just the way of life. And then there are those who say, I don't see this as a problem, so why are we making a big deal of it? To everyone in our real estate space, we have challenges to address. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I believe not acknowledging the issues continues to undermine the mission of making everyone feel invited and included. Much of what I've talked about surrounds diversity, equity, inclusion, and discrimination. But I want us to make sure that when we're having these kind of conversations, that we truly understand the meaning of those words. Because if we don't, it only hurts the situations more. There's so many people who think about diversity as a black and white issue, but it's so much bigger than that. Diversity is anything that's different than the way you think, the way you feel, the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you worship, the way you play, the way you engage with other people, and the way you react. It's appreciating each other's uniquenesses. Think about committee work within your organizations. How to intentionally reach out to people who bring a different perspective. Having representatives from the different disciplines, backgrounds, and real estate sitting at the table can make us think deeper rather than surface, along with adding a lot of value. Equity is just removing the barriers that keep people from being able to have the same opportunities to participate. And then we want to talk about inclusion. And it's just recognizing each other's uniqueness and leveraging those to get to a win-win situation. Some conversations need to start with letting people know how much you appreciate them, how many good things you see in them, and how much you want to be a part of them. And then lead into a conversation about something that you've noticed that they may not be aware of, their unconscious bias. We need to elevate diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with fair housing conversations whenever and wherever possible. We cannot be embarrassed to have those conversations in today's time. This is not about a moment in time. This has to be the start of an everlasting movement. We need people who are going to be inclusive leaders if this is going to be successful. So as I wrap up, I want to share, to see a rainbow, you have to go through some storms. There are times you have to weather the storms and hurt, disappointment, anger, humiliation, lack of patience, all the while staying steadfast to getting things done. The storms that have been part of my life, of my real estate career, have helped me learn, grow, and to collaborate. They have all helped me to help others. I hope you will agree that we can have all the training in the world when it comes to fair housing laws and diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's realtors. realtors on the street that implement fair housing rules and laws, and together it is us who will make a difference when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion within our industry. If we focus on us first, we can bring more awareness to our industry partners and to the public. A quote that I love is, "We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on those experiences." And I'd like to add to that, we must address those experiences. So thank you so much to each and every one of you for being here today, because it says that you're ready to start making a difference. You're ready to go on the line to make sure that we're addressing the experiences to make things better. So thank you so very much.
Well, how was that for a starter? Thank you, Miss Joanne. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And we've only just begun. Did you write your questions down for Joanne? She'll be back in just a few minutes. But for now, if I can, Mr. F.J. Williams, my friend Frank, Realtor extraordinaire for 50 plus years, a man who has truly seen it all, been there, done that, and led us through many, many, many changes in this world. I give to you the iconic Frank Williams.
You ain't fair. My great grandson says that you ain't fair. You put me up here after these great people, after these wonderful speakers, after these knowledgeable people. But I'm extremely happy to be here with you guys. Happy to have had the opportunity to talk about something that's certainly truly very important to me. As you can see, I've got a whole dictionary here with me. Huh? Well, do you have one? Why don't you do that?
We're gonna take this.
So you see how they treat me, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, because then I can fumble through all these papers. Yeah.
Put that in your pocket.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say thanks to all of you. I want to say thanks for certainly giving me the opportunity to talk about a subject that is important to all of us. I asked last night and I'll ask again, are we really serious? As my good friend said a moment ago, I've been here for a while. This is my I'm going into my 84th year and my 55th year as a licensed real estate person. I've seen a lot of promises. I've heard our association apologize to us. Are we serious? Because you are our association. I know this, that before any bias, any negative thoughts, we first respond to family. Is that correct? We respond to family. Then politically, we deal with nepotism, politics, to take care of those that are close to us. And then we deal with our partiality, which I guess can be a positive or a negative. Because if it's positive to one, it may very well be negative to another. We have a long, rich history, and certainly Gwen took some of the history away from me. Joanne taking some of the history away from me. But we still got to deal with History 101. And it just does not start in our industry. It starts with all of us in our churches, in our schools, in our communities, and all the places that we are involved with. They allege to us this is Black History Month. Is that correct? Dr. Carter G. Woodson started in the 30s that it was Black History Week, and now it's Black History Month. My mother used to say to me, I'm your mother every day. So don't show up giving me some gift on some day. Do it all the time. Dr. Carter G. Woodson said to us, if you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. If you can determine what a man thinks, you do not have to worry about what he will do. If you can make a man believe that he is inferior, you don't have to compel him to seek an inferior status. He will do so without being told. And if you can make a man believe that he is justly an outcast, you don't have to order him to the back door. He will go to the back door on his own. And if there is no back door, the very nature of the man will demand that you build one. Our history, for many of us, have placed us there. Mentally enslaved. Mentally enslaved. And I would just read a little from W.E.B. Du Bois, and then I'll move on to some other things. It is peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at one's self through the eyes of others. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled thrivings, two warring ideas in one dark body. Who dogged strength along keeps it from being torn asunder. As we talk about our history, and that's got to be a series of things over the past 150 some years, the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Gang, before that, persons that looked like me couldn't go to school, couldn't own property, couldn't speak out of turn. But then there was, even before the Great Emancipation Proclamation, it was said that we were slaves with 3/5 of a person. My God. The Bill of Rights, the Dred Scott decision. Then we got 1865, the Great Emancipation Proclamation, right? Well, Harold Washington said to a group of us in the 70s when we were in Springfield and we had gotten past it, because that's when we were doing all the battles about anti-solicitation, for sale sign bans, etc. And the State House and the State Senate passed the bill. We were excited. We had won. Harold said, listen, Frank, there's two other parts to that, and you guys know it. There's the committee that writes the rules for the implementation of the law. And the writers can water it down so where it doesn't even appear as if you passed it. And then the other part of that, many laws just sit on the shelf because there is lack of appropriations. Nobody's sitting on that committee to appropriate the money to deal with the law. And I can go through many of them, but I'd like to go to Plessy versus Ferguson. Separate but equal in 1896. That's the Supreme Court decision, right? How in the hell can an ex-slave, only been out of slavery 30 years, be equal to the slave master? But obviously there was enough things that have happened those 30 years to say that we've got to do something about them. What do? We segregate them. We put them in a place and we can watch them and control them, control the thinking. And there's been many forms of Plessy versus Ferguson, because even after 1954, when they struck down separate but equal Brown versus Board of Education, there have been so many laws every decade that have dictated how we were going to be separated from each other continuously. And as Joanne said it a little bit ago, and that it's still happening. Now, we all were extremely excited, were we not, about the 1968 passage of the modern day Civil Rights Act? Were we excited? Oh my God, I was doing cartwheels and headstands. Whew. President Johnson has said, well, hell, I didn't know. Did you know that it wasn't worth the paper it was written on? There was no enforcement mechanisms, nobody to be punished. But we were excited about it. And you know, it's one thing, I'm a member, as we talk about the Dearborn Realtist group, Asian group, and all the other groups. I pay my dues in order to say what's in order for me, what's on my mind. Well, our organization, we're Realtors, right? There was a voluntary affirmative marketing agreement, VAMA. Now that's all we had to do. I became a Realtor in 1971, 50 years. Realtist, 51 years. I was in San Francisco when we finally, Ralph Pritchard invited me to the regional caucus. I was the only one who looked like me, and I stood in the back of the room. And I listened to the Rich Ports and all the other biggies arguing about the government's not going to tell them about what they got to do about housing. We did not sign that voluntary affirmative market agreement until then. Are we together? That's 7 years after the passage. Now, I'm not talking about something that somebody told me. I'm talking about something that I've had the opportunity to watch, to be with, and live with. So there's a lot of history that certainly I'm not going to go through at this point, but I've been one of those that when I joined this organization, I went to work. And some folks have said to me, Frank, you were ahead of your time. Because I thought then, and I think now, that I was important and should have a seat at the table and negotiate with the highest and the best of us. That's what I felt. I feel like today. Well, often was cut out of it. Any of you guys know Stacy Moncrieff? Huh? Yeah. You know Stacy? I know Stacy. She used to be Waldron. That was a maiden name. When I was serving on our national committee, I'd raised the national board. I'd raised the question in the early 90s. No, the late 80s, early 90s. And so I got a letter, which I just read a little bit. I'd raised the questions about the positions that our national association, state association, our local association had dealt with during those years. I just read a little bit from it. This was addressed to me. I wanted to get back to you on our conversation, and then I go to the next paragraph. As you, and of course I'm not as young as I used to be, as you expect, there was very little evidence that pointed to overt discrimination in housing. It was clear that the association favored home ownership rights for African Americans as long as it was within prescribed boundaries. I'm not going to read any more of that. Do I need to? Huh? Now, don't say, anybody want a copy of whatever I've got here? I'm prepared to. I think I sent you a copy of some of this stuff. Okay, I'll see that you get some of this here. It's not easy to keep overcoming barriers, is it? We talk about FHA in 1934, segregation. They're the ones that started redlining. 1944, the VA joined them in redlining. FHA fired me twice because I questioned the appraisal process. I was an appraiser for them. And I asked the question in the early 1980s when the southern suburbs, Mabel, the southern suburbs of Chicago was going through its transition. Jim Lockinen, the regional director for fair housing for FHA, called all of us appraisers throughout the state and then put before us 8 of the village officials to talk. And God, I'm sitting there, I'm wondering, somebody please ask the question before we leave today. I don't want to because my mother said I talk out of my mouth too much. So please, somebody. So then I had to raise my, Mr. Lockinen, yes, Frank, what is the message today? Because they had asked that we appraise the contract price. That was the message I'd received. We were praising many times below contract price. So the message for us to praise a contract price. Well, Mr. Lockerman, that's okay with me as long as we can do it in Chatham and West Chesterfield and Inglewood. And well, I knew at that point that I wasn't going to be doing any more FHA appraising. So the deck has been stacked, ladies and gentlemen, and it continues to be stacked. But I think I was invited because I'm the poster child for investigation. Because I talk too much, as my mother said, out of my mouth. Let the church say amen. Let me just kind of talk about, is it okay if I just talk a little bit about my personal history? Absolutely. Man, you don't know what you're doing. And I guess I was raised like, in Flint, Michigan, with a single mother up until she remarried when I was 10 years old. And they bought a house in Flint, half a block from the Buick factory, block from the Flint River. Railroad tracks ran very close to us. And of course, schools were all black, from 1st to 6th, and junior high, integrated, high school, integrated. 1956, my senior year in high school. And of course, the school population in Flint Northern was probably 85% Caucasian. 15, 20% Black. Well, I think as you ladies know, and Sue really know, I love kissing ladies and appreciating ladies. Right, my bad. So it's beautiful, brilliant, beautiful sophomore lady, and I'm a senior, captain of a state championship football team. Of course, she didn't know football from a golf ball. She was like me, and I liked her. What gang you know? Caucasian girl, beautiful Caucasian girl, Black fella. You know, that wasn't right. Emmett Till had just been killed. You know, that wasn't right. Well, they suspended me from high school. Kicked out. Scholarships that I should have earned, couldn't get because white coaches talk to white coaches. And he's one of them. What do you think would happen to you at 18 years old if you were kicked out of high school? What would your reaction, response be? Anybody, I don't care. Huh? Be angry, she says. Oh, that's kind of moderate. Well, I still thought, well, let me do this here. But what happened, they filed a complaint, 16 and 18, contributing to a minor. Are we together? My being 18, I'm a majority. Joanne 16, my wife is Joanne, spelled just like yours. 16, 1 year probation. Well, I thought I was gonna go to the Army. No. In the 50s, you couldn't, if you were on probation or something, you couldn't go to the Army. Now I'm caught because I'm still thinking of going to school. I love school. And I love teaching today, ladies and gentlemen. Still do a lot of real estate teaching. I was worse than angry. I was bad, terrible. And I acted it out for 5 years. I mean, there was no worse, because I was doing exactly what was wanted for me to do, like so many of us. Because, you know, once you get a felony conviction, you cease being a human being. But I didn't get it. I learned how to think, how to watch, how to calculate. But two women that gave me all the love, my mother and my wife, carried me through that terrain. My wife, Joanne, we married, you know, after she got back. We married. She said, I'm going to Chicago. I said, because you can go to jail if you want to, but I'm going to Chicago. Started all over again. Are we together? Started all over again. What I do, I got a job at the U.S. Post Office. It's a letter carrier. Now, what's your job? What you do?
The executive director of the House.
At the Housing Authority. Guess what I was doing when 1962, when I first got to Chicago, carrying mail to Robert Taylor Homes. They were building Robert Taylor Homes. That is when I got to learn about my people. 16 stories, 10 apartments on each floor, from 39th Street to 55th Street. I got to learn about my people and really the conditions that my folks was living in. See, because in Flint, all of our folks didn't have to have an education. All they could do is put their X and they get a job at Chevrolet Buick, Turnstead, AC Spark Plugs. So they was working. But here in Chicago is a whole different matter. Well, let me just, I don't know if it's because I know I had to cut down on a lot of this stuff. I came so prepared. Hey, I'm sorry you got, huh? That's the old lady, she was with us last night, you got. She tried to pretend to be a young lady. I opened my office in 1971. That's 50 years, going on 51st year now. Well, that was right in the midst of racial change on the south side of Chicago. And as Gwen had said, where the ghetto was, you understand, it was starting to bust open. Boy, and I was selling a lot of real estate. Joanne was selling a lot of real estate. Not my wife, Joanne. I know you was, but my wife. No, you wasn't even in the business in them days. Beautiful. They were demonstrating and breaking office windows. We were 9005 South Ashland. I became a realtor that year also. I had Russ Pocock and Gordon Groby, two outstanding firms, gentlemen, Caucasians, to sign my application to become a member. And you see, at that time, you had to appear before a membership committee. And I didn't read that part where it said but Stacy, in that material, anybody want it can get a copy. In that material that the librarian had researched for us, that said that certainly you had to have a certain character, whatever that meant, in order to become a member. During those years from 1971, I became a Realtors president in 1973 and 1974. And my effort then was to bring together a closeness between the Realtors and the Realtors. Now I'm caught in the middle. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. You see, we both come with a bias. The only difference is that you guys are sitting at the head of the table and calling the shots. I was accused of blockbusting, panic peddling, and all those kinds of things. Of course, I was testifying against zoning restrictions. Bought a house in Beverly. Our driver, Casey. You know, Casey? Casey said when he called me to say that I'll be picking you up, where should I pick you up? I said 9428 South Damon. He said, hell, Frank, I was raised right down the street at 9324 South Damon. Well, it wasn't easy for us to move into Beverly. And then in 75, there was a Molotov cocktail put in our door. Our windows broken, you know, things of that nature. Why am I telling you folks this? I'm telling you this because there have been many obstacles that we've had to deal with. And what I'm dealing with today is really not the essence of all of that, because in 1979, has anybody been investigated by the Justice Department? You know, United States Justice Department? None of you have? Well, what you guys been doing? Well, I got a copy here if I want to. They said what they asked me for. I didn't ask me, told me in order that I appear on a certain date in 1979, that I bring all of our sales transactions that were FHA and VA. That's 5 years. And we're selling a lot of real estate, believe it or not. Now, if you don't know, that scares the hell out of you first. And you think you're guilty of something. You really think you start thinking you're guilty of something when somebody want to investigate you. And then, of course, in 1980 to 1985, the IRS investigates you. Audit you, I'm sorry. Huh? And that's my little young lawyer friend back there, Brian. He drove down last night and brought he brought me a fifth of a Remy Martin VSOP for my 50th. So thank you, Brian. Yeah. I guess what I'm saying here is that And yes, I've been doing a life sentence with IRS. I mean, that's a life sentence because every time you think you'll get over the hump, something happens. You understand? So you don't get over the hump. So you got to keep dealing with them, keep dealing with them. Well, all I'm going to say is this, is that my story, and that's only a little piece of it, it's not an exception to what happens to us that are not in step with the system. My only exception is that I'm not dead, not killed. Because those 5 years, I'm still alive. That's number one. Number two, I'm not in the penitentiary because that was the intent. Because most of the young men that look like me, the bright ones, the smart ones, the brilliant ones, are doing time in jail. And then the last part of that, I'm standing here before you folks, a licensed real estate broker, a licensed appraiser, a licensed CE instructor, a licensed, whatever that other teaching is, license is. GRI, CRB, you know. My point is this, is that I know I fit, I belong at the head of the table, and I'm gonna call a spade, thanks to you with your beautiful self, my wonderful friend, Mabel. She put me in contact with her wonderful, brilliant Cuban sister to work with the Hope Fair Housing Group as a paid consultant. You know, so I've been doing this stuff for free. I've been fighting this fight all these years and ain't got no money, ain't got no pay. And then, see, so I have to kiss that child because she says, I want you, you'll be contacted by a good friend of mine that will hire you as a consultant. So I guess what I'm attempting to say today is that if we're going to do this here, let's do it together. But you owe me. You do. There's a debt to be paid, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm sorry, please forgive me. That ain't gonna work. There's a level of reparations that's due. And where's that beautiful young lady? The Minority Scholarship Program. She brought up the day we was on a Zoom. Well, 1993 is when we were finally able to get a minority scholarship program for $25,000. Well, that was chump change at that time. But I knew that after everybody used it up the first year, we're going to get double and triple that. Well, it is just now starting to be promoted. And thanks to you, what's your name, man? The guy that do all the stuff over there, that's running the machine. What's his name? What's his name again? No, Scooby Dooby number 2B. And so all I got to say is that in my mind, that was a part of start for some form of reparations. A little piece like the Everson Group is doing, but there's so much to be done. And the whole program is about investigating appraisers. Well, appraisers is, the low end of it. But if we're going to start correcting that, we got to get more folks to look like me. And folks that look like me to make enough money that can hire some trainees, you understand? Because you're training them to be your competition, but still you're in a position because you got enough work to do that. So we talk about reparations. We ain't talking about going to the bank and drawing some money. We're talking about doing the things necessary to help us to get in a position to compete, to play the game. And I thank you. I didn't get to half of it, but thanks, guys.
Well, thank you, Frank. Give Frank a big hand. Frank, don't go very far. He's going to the couch. Frank, you're coming to the couch. Miss Joanne, could you come join us on the couch, please? Absolutely. In the meantime, while I have Frank and Joanne joining us on the couch, I also want to note you, if you haven't picked up a bookmark, please do. We're promoting our Realtor Reads promotion, which is a series of live and online events that will empower you and teach you more about our subject of the day. And we do have the two events, one in April being hosted by MIRA, Mid-Illinois Realtors Association, and one in June hosted by Hometown Realtors. So please pick up your bookmark on your way out if you haven't already. Were there any on the table? I think there's some on the table as well. So if you need additionals or some in back, Neely, could you make sure we have plenty available? So everybody enjoying it so far? Yeah. If you've learned something, give me a nod. Look at that. I'm moving. So are you two mic'd up? I need mics for my friends. Are those mics working? Or can you give Joanne a mic? Perfect. All right, so before I go into my questions, who has a burning question they'd like to ask our super guests? Anybody? No question. Go ahead. Aaron.
I just wanted to know if Joanne could share with us
Her practice for having patience. That's a big problem for me. And I'm reactive and I end up feeling sick when things happen because I hold it all inside, and I would love to know how you do it.
I start with praying. I pray before I speak a lot of times. I pray for the right words, and I pray that they come forward without anger. Because normally, if I speak first, I think I could live to regret some of the things I would say. Yeah.
Joanne, thank you, Aaron. Anyone else have a burning question before I start my list? Anyone else? You guys are holding out on me. All right, well, I'm going to start the hard conversation, and I'm sure that will spark some new conversation. So Frank and Joanne, thank you both for sharing your stories. I think we could listen all day to both of you, because obviously not only do you bring joy, tears, honesty, emotional transparency, you bring yourselves to the table. And thank you for bringing you here today. But clearly discrimination is very much still an issue in real estate and occurs in our own backyards. And you have lived it, you have walked it, you have tried to solve it. Why do you think it still exists and hasn't been resolved? Who wants to take that hot topic?
You want to go first?
Mother always told me.
I want to meet Frank's mother.
I do too.
She's a smart woman. So Miss Joanne, why do
Yeah.
you think it's still here?
Because people wanted to be here. It's as simple as that. Those that are in authority only permit so much power to people. And when that level starts to increase to a point of being threatening, people are cut off at the knees. There are things that happen to set you up to fail. And the discrimination rises throughout. We're seeing it today, and so much of it is political that I don't even want to go there with that. But we have to understand that it's that politically, that's undermining a lot of it. Just like I said, I think that there are a lot of people who, if they ever stop to really hear themselves, would say, I didn't think I would say stuff like that. And then there are people who would say stuff and say, it's for the good of the order. So as we grow, we have to understand that all of us are not growing at the same speed. We have to understand that we're not going to learn and all at the same level, and that we all don't want to learn at the same level. So it's easier for those who find themselves with oppressive attitudes to keep us oppressed. than it is for them to admit that they're wrong and to come over and say, what can I do to help?
Frank, do you agree?
Yes. Oh, yes. It's us. And I'm talking about folks that look like me as well as folks that look like you as we deal with where we are today. I'm a young Black person, got 2 luxury automobiles, a colonial house. I don't want to upset the apple cart. So I'm not a crazy like Frank that will jump up, challenge the system, say it's not right, it's not treating me fair, I want my share of the pie, you owe me some form of reparation. Our organization have held us down. Our federal government has held us down. Our religious bodies have held us down. And we today continue to accept through our mental mentality of slavery. We put ourselves. So I'm not gonna blame it on, you understand, the employers. I can remember when folks look like me could not work for a firm, any one of you guys' firm. It has been that long. And it's the bright of my folks that work for the white firms. And they earn well, and only because of those 25, 30 years of racial plight within the community. And so it's important that you hire somebody to look like Frank because he cannot produce for us. And I continue to struggle, my company, and I've been offered some pretty handsome positions. But that would stop me doing what is inside of me. So it's on both sides. Today, right now, I hold as much responsibility as a Black person because I'm not getting at the table and demanding. And I hear my brothers and sisters talking about it, they ain't the right time to be talking about reparations. Well, when the hell is it? You owe me for the past 150 years or more. How you plan to pay me?
Which leads me perfectly into my next question, that those conversations are extraordinarily difficult for most people to have.
I'm stuck on stupid.
No, they're difficult. So how do we encourage people to have them and to get involved with the continuance of your movement? And I love the fact that this isn't a moment, it's a movement that started 150 years ago. So we're very much at the beginning of the movement. But how do we encourage people to get involved with this movement, move it forward, and in your own words, make it right? How do we do that? You two have been leading this fight for a long time. How do we continue the conversation and get people involved? Frank?
We have to certainly build a rainbow. I hate to be repeating justice. A rainbow coalition, which we really don't have. I mean, well, we're committed and we're not afraid and we're going to fight. If I should lose my job, and I just said, hell, I've been fired more than once. I've been investigated more than once. But there's not a lot of us that's going to do that. That's going to accept that kind of challenge. We are like sheep. Pardon me for saying it. And I don't care what racial, ethnic group we are. We're like sheep. We line up. And I know often, for example, as I was going through positions with our organization, folks want to write my script. You can't write my script. There's no way. You know, I have to write my own script to tell my own story. And, you know, it costs, because in 93 and 94, when I aspired to be one of you guys presidents, or at least an officer, you know, I was almost laughed at. Yes, but I went, stood up and went through the song and dance to get it. but I knew that, the numbers weren't there. But, and I asked last night at our dinner, and I asked when we started, are we serious? Are we prepared to pay the price? Am I afraid of losing my account? Well, I ain't got nothing. But, seriously, I was one of the fastest growing young colored guys in the industry. But you understand, if you keep putting roadblocks, what happens? It knocks you off the track. Of course, the intent is that I should have been in the penitentiary 30 years earlier, but that was the intent. For me to do wrong enough to get caught and go to the state penitentiary in Michigan, and then be somewhere, criminal for the rest of my life. But it's up to us, and I asked it last night, I'll ask it again. Are we just talking about Black Lives Matter, and then it falls by the wayside? Or do we make a commitment to all lives mattering, and that we're seeing to it if we owe a debt, because if you owe your mortgage payment, you make it, otherwise you get foreclosed on.
Ms. Joanne, what do you think? How do we continue this conversation? How do we encourage others to get involved?
I think that everyone who's here today to tell what you heard today. It's spreading the word. It's you being able to say, I heard firsthand. This was not something I read. This was not something that somebody said happened in history. I heard a life story. I've heard many life stories. And there are a lot of stories like mine. And what's so sad about it is that you can have somebody who told you, this happened to me last week. In today's time, it is important for us to understand that the political correctness is to talk about it, not to step back and say, not talk about it. If we can move that forward, and if you can tell one person who makes and helps them, their light bulb go off, the movement starts.
So as a society, we have all developed implicit bias and stereotypes based on individual difficulties and differences. Yet some individuals say that everyone is equal and we have the same opportunities before us, which in your stories today, we obviously have heard something different. How do we best acknowledge the differences that speak to words other than equitable and inclusive? Comments, thoughts? What are you thinking? Frank, hold your mic up.
I just said that if great-grandpa Williams had the opportunity, that would be wealth, a level of wealth, a level of equity. So we don't have that. So we're not starting at the same place. And I keep saying the term, and I was doing it 30 years ago, 35 years ago, the end of the hours, National Board meeting. You want to hear that? That there is a time that we are to be paid. And the only way that's going to happen is that we demand it. Now, I know that I'm kind of whistling in a manner that sounds well. It's not my fault, but you today have been able to live in a certain way that my family was not able to live over these years. So today we're talking about it. So it just didn't begin today. It began back then. You said 150 years. It began then. So then how do we start to bring that to a level playing field? That is what we all have to consider, what we all have to think about. Yes, you're a wonderful people. She's a wonderful person. I'm a wonderful person. But let's lift the tide together. Not just, we done had enough research on it. Geez, if I had the money for all the universities doing their research on discrimination, you know what I'm saying, on biases. I mean, there's a book come out every month about that. And they done paid them several $100,000 to write the book. Well, we know what the problem is. Let's do something about it. Let's really work at doing something about it.
Joanne, do you feel the same?
I do, excuse me, I do. But I will say that there is a difference in knowing opportunities exist and having the door open for you to go through to achieve those opportunities. I think that all of us in the room would agree that a posting on the wall does not mean that everybody would have access to achieving that goal of getting that, whatever that posting is. A lot of what we're talking about today is not just about me. It's about me hoping that what's happening will open doors for people behind me.
Say it again.
So it's realizing that when we're talking about equity, that we're talking about making everything accessible to everyone to be able to participate, not just telling them you can and then closing the door. So it's removing those barriers.
See, because again, as we're talking, just think about it right now, we're talking about appraisals. Location. Well, in my mind, location wealthy, location middle white, location well them. And appraisers are seeing it as such. So it's still cutting a very deep scar in the communities that we serve, where we live. We've just started having the opportunity as real estate practitioners to sell anywhere we want to. If my wife wasn't Caucasian, we probably wouldn't got a lot of the listings that we got in the 70s. So we were able to work both sides of the aisle. That's just a real tip.
So I want to expand the conversation here off my talking points, because much like you, Frank, being in leadership, I've been scripted and I often go off script because that's what you and I do. I'm in a room. I'm a past president now. What are they going to do? Fire me? So I'm in a room of realtors, and clearly we're asked all the time, tell me about your community. Tell me about your area. How many of you have been asked that by a client? Look at all the headings on. What do we say to them today? What's the correct way to answer that question, given all the conversation that we're having right now? Joanne, how do you train this room of realtors? What do you say to that client? You faced this. I know you have. We've had this conversation.
It's the first thing that we have to understand is that what they're asking us might not be what we're receiving. Okay, so it's important to break down the conversation, take bites of it, and make a decision on how to answer what they're really asking you, and not you assuming that you know what they're asking you. It's easy to put up defenses. So what we have to do is to stay at a place where we can say, I'm going to try to answer your question, but I really need to make sure I understand what you mean when you say community. I really need to understand what you want me to talk about when we talk about areas. Because the conversation can go sideways and you can get trapped and you can go down rabbit holes that you never can get out of. And again, that's the perception. Your answers are the perceptions that will follow you. And that you've opened the doors to perceptions of those who look like me and other people of color and diverse backgrounds to say, this is what they all think. So it's important to know when you make it, when you're answering a person's question, that you understand the question.
Frank, you've said you've sold on both sides of the tracks. How do you feel about that answer? How, and as an instructor, what would you tell our audience? How would they answer that question?
Well, I think today we're speaking to the choir.
But there are a bunch of learners.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're the choir. They're attentive. They're listening. But I would just say, be number one yourself, or be by yourself. You're gonna make mistakes, and we say that as soon as we start dealing in our real estate business. And it's okay to err, just don't play the encores, and don't be stuck on stupid. But you know, really, if you know, and when you've got a question, ask the question, and you ask someone that knows the answer to the question. You understand? If you're dealing with commercial real estate, you don't talk to a guy that specializes in residential. And if you're talking about development, you want to talk to a developer. So we have to seek out those who are real and pure at heart and really have the courage to call a spade a spade. Whether you're going to be loved and liked, scorned. And I know these 50 years I've been a realtor, I could just imagine some of the names that I've been called, because I didn't just get here. I came in 1971. Of course, I didn't know much about what was happening, but I had the courage to know that I'm a learner, and I'm a listener, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to learn the craft. And I know that it's when the sun is shining as opposed to when it's raining. And I know many folks would say to me, as a matter of fact, I really remember Dick Crosby said, I just don't understand what you're saying to us. Because, and I know at first I thought he was just talking stuff, but he really just didn't know. So then I had to settle in and take some time to say, wait a minute, because I was the only one of us in Springfield at those meetings, with the exception of Al Gasson out of Evanston, and Mabel was president of CAR when he died, but he stopped coming because he was so angry. He wasn't going to, you know, stay in that battle. But the key is that there are those of us that just got to stay. Now, of course, if money makes you, then you got to keep doing what you do and getting the money. Money don't make me. Yeah.
Thank you. Before I go on, anybody have a burning question they want to ask? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap us up. Go ahead.
What we want in our communities. We can't necessarily control, you know, larger things like whether we're pulling out of Afghanistan or not, but I think do our shoulder right and promote Voucher. Somewhere. I feel that a person's not a character that knows how to follow the steps. I've heard racism on the opposite spectrum, no racism at all, everywhere in between. But I'm lucky that I had good friends close to me. It showed me that this is bad to judge people just by the contents of their by color of skin. And so we all need that positive influence in our life to bring us in the right direction. And I believe that we are responsible to ourselves and to our families and our communities to start on that small level with the community that we want. Everyone deserves a chance to be included. We should celebrate our similarities and our differences and all of them at the same time.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Ginger.
I just wanted to share that. I echo what Joanne's saying about that if we're not aware of what's happening, we can't do anything about it or rectify it. And it was a decade ago that I was chair of the Housing Opportunity Group for Illinois Realtors. And one of our committee members was Dale Taylor. And Dale told us of a personal story that happened to him. And it touched my heart. And I never would have known something like this would have happened unless he had shared what happened in our workplace as a realtor, and a very distinguished realtor as it was. He had to have a white agent in his office called to set up a showing on a property because when he tried and they heard his voice and recognized that he might have been Black, there were no showings available. And I was like, are you kidding me? I never ever would have known something like this would have happened. That was about a decade ago. And it took a while for our code of ethics to say, not only can you not discriminate by our code of ethics by protected classes, you have to treat your fellow realtors non-discriminatory wise. And I thought we had to write that down. We had to put that in writing or we can't. So I think the more that we hear of these things that happen, that was not anywhere in my universe, it makes us become aware and educated. And I just want to echo, thank you for sharing some of the things that have happened to you personally. Hopefully it's all touched us. And that was a decade ago, and I remember that like that was yesterday. And those of you that know Dale Taylor, you know that he is amazing. And I can't imagine somebody turning him away from the show.
Thank you, Ginger. Mabel, did you have a comment?
A question.
A question.
It was through the legal process that a lot of this happened. And so laws were passed to keep Black people from participating. So how is that we can use the legal process today to actually correct a lot of that? So that we can look to say we're frank if anyone who is Black can compete. So if we have the laws of douchebaggery, as I like to say, happen to keep Black people from competing, how is that we can use the laws today to then move the process forward when we do have the true equity? And I guess which laws should we be tackling? Tax code? Should we be actually ratifying housing rights, expanding housing rights to human rights?
So Mabel's question is, if a poor legal system got us here, what part of the law do we attack first to get us out of here? You're welcome. Is that what you said? So any short answer to that, or where do we go with that one?
That's too big for me, baby.
Too big for Frank.
You're
Joanne, are you on it?
Yeah, yeah. The laws that exist could be better if we had the candidates and the Congress people in place to make a change. No matter what we try to do, no matter how we try to get where we want to go, we have Congress who will block a lot of things that need to be accomplished when it comes to political laws. An example of that today was the Supreme Court even agreeing. This is difficult. The Supreme Court agreeing that the lines that are drawn in place to eliminate minority voting to take place was okay. So what laws can we put in place to make things get better? What laws do we address first? It's the voting rights. Putting the right people in Congress to be able to get the big picture, to be more inclusive instead of exclusive.
I know we're running short on time and I have lots of questions, but I'm going to ask one final question of our superstars. What have we missed and what would you like to share before we close up today? Joanne, what are we missing?
You know, I don't believe we're missing anything. I truly believe that this is a good day. I believe that everyone who took the time to come here today to hear this will be changed just a little bit, just enough to be able to go back home and say, I have biases that I didn't even know about. I heard about biases that I didn't even think existed. So I'm going to self-evaluate and I'm going to get better. So this is a good day. And I hope that we end on a high note instead of one to walk out and say, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end. That's all.
Thank you, Joanne. Frank, closing thoughts?
My dear, my sweet, wonderful, adorable, delightful. I'm so happy to be here, and I'll tell you why I'm so happy to be here. Is because in many of these instances over the years, I've been isolated from, not invited. So I was doing cartwheels and hit stands. You grabbed me, Zeke's insulation, Joanne, and you ordered me. You ordered me to be here with Joanne, talk about our plight, you know. But that was truly encouraging because it just regular and ordinary for you to invite me, but so many others, because from where I come from, would not have invited because you understand it. You know it. Yeah. So I thank you. Thank you because see she has the brilliance. I have the thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen.
You got some.
Oh, I have a question in the back. Go ahead.
I just one more comment. Well, I've been a realtor for 16 years. I want to say thank you to Heartland. Ever since day one, I felt very welcome in the office. We're always very open to help. No way I ever felt like that. So you guys are doing a great job. I also want to thank everyone in the room. You guys are the ones that make the difference in this type of situation. And I don't think you're recognize that. Minorities, I think, focus a little bit more on the people as well. There is plenty of people out there that do the best that you can to obviously make us feel better and to make us feel welcome. A little short story back in high school. Honestly, I was terrified. Imagine me, a 50-year-old kid in high school with zero English. I was riding the bus to the house, and for some reason I missed my stop, and nobody in the bus speaks Spanish. So they were trying to get me home, and they were just a few kids from high school that know their Spanish were doing the best they could to figure things out, and they got me home. So there's a lot of people out there like you that you try to help us out. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Arturo. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank my friends Joanne and Frank. And at this point, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to my president, Tim Sebastian.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Thank you, everyone. Thanks hand again for our wonderful speakers. Surely touching and enlightening, and I hope you all picked up much knowledge in listening today. And let me say thank you, give your all a hand for coming today. This is wonderful. A wonderful turnout that we have here. The DEI task force for putting everything together, and they're the real driving force behind this. Thanks again, Sue Miller, as the chairman of that. But all our members of the task force, are you here, please? Stand up, please. Thank you, ladies. And you sort of set the bar high. So what are you going to do next? We're top secret. And with that, once again, I thank you all for coming. Please stay involved. Please join our book club. Oh, yes, and the painting in the back, please. So can I ask what's going to happen with the painting?
living, breathing, memory of this event